Hi guys, Miss Vance again. We're beginning Unit 14 now, which is about plants and ecology. We're going to focus first of all this week on plants, and the first part of our notes on plants will be about plant structure and transport. So plants have certain kinds of structures. They have organs, believe it or not. Their organs are stems and roots and leaves. And each one has specific structures and functions that are necessary for the function of the plant. We have in the picture here a flowering plant that is labeled to show the different parts. Of course, the roots are the parts of the plant that allow for the absorption of water and nutrients, minerals, and things like that from the soil. Notice that on the roots there are tiny little root hairs, and like you noticed in the villi in the small intestine when we talked about body systems, the root hairs increase the surface area for absorption of the water through the from the soil through the root tissue. The stem is the main part of the plant that holds up the plant and holds the leaves, and the leaves are the other main organs of the plant that allow for photosynthesis and making the food for the plant. It's also how gases get exchanged in plants, and specialized leaves make up flowers, which are reproductive organs of flowering plants. And so we'll focus on that when we talk about reproduction. So there are three main tissue systems that you find in plants. Okay, the first kind that we're talking about here is dermal tissue. As you might suspect, dermal tissue is stuff that's found on the surface, kind of like your epidermis is found on your surface as well. And like that, the dermal tissue also covers the plant and provides protection for the internal structures of the plant. In leaves, the dermis includes stomata, which are pores with guard cells that regulate how water vapor and oxygen and carbon dioxide move into and out of the leaves. As you might suspect, there's a need for carbon dioxide to do photosynthesis, and then oxygen is produced as a waste product from photosynthesis. And so there needs to be a way for that gas exchange to occur in the leaves, which is the site, which are the site of photosynthesis. The vascular tissue system transports materials inside the plant. There are two main parts of the vascular tissue system: the xylem, which moves water from place to place in the plant, from the roots to the stems, water and minerals, and then phloem is the transport system for the sugars that are produced in the leaves by photosynthesis. The third kind of tissue is called ground tissue, and ground tissue is used for pretty much everything else, for storage. The photosynthetic cells are parts of ground tissue, support structures like in the stem and in the woody stems of trees. Those are also made of ground tissue. Here we have some pictures that show you the elements that are found in the xylem. Xylem is mostly composed of dead cells, that just hollow tubes basically, that allow for the transport of water from the roots to the stem and the rest of the plant. Vessel elements and tracheids are the two kinds of cells that you find, and they're all dead cells. They have pits and pores that allow for the movement of water from one cell to the other, to the next. There are also water is going to move by, remember, cohesion and adhesion that we talked about way back when we talked about water, and also the process of transpiration, which kind of provides an upward thrust for movement. The cells that you find in phloem are called sieve tube elements and companion cells. The sieve tube elements are the main tube parts. They are living cells, but they are mostly hollow, and the companion cells take care of the metabolic needs of the sieve tube elements because they're connected together like that. There is cytoplasm, and that allows for the movement of the sugars through the tubes there. Transpiration is a process that's remember the evaporation of water from the surface of leaves, and it can move the xylem sap to the top of the tallest tree. Okay, xylem sap moves through those xylem tissue cells, pulled by transpiration, and utilizing adhesion and cohesion of the water molecules, as you can see in the little inset at the bottom of the slide here. that lets it move through those tubes. Sap movement is helped by the properties of water, and it doesn't really require any energy. There's not a pump that pumps the water up to the top. It's strictly a combination of capillary action via adhesion and cohesion that is aided by the pull of transpiration, of the evaporation from the leaves, which is transpiration. In the diagram on the right, you can see that you can see all the movement and how the movement goes from the roots through the stem and all the way up to the top of the tree. There's tension between the water molecules that's provided by the cohesion of the water molecules for each other and their adhesion to the cell walls of the xylem cells. And those things allow the chain of water molecules to be pulled up as they evaporate out from the leaves. Transpiration is controlled by the guard cells. The guard cells are found generally on the bottom sides of leaves, although there are some leaves that have the stomata on the upper surface of the leaves as well. But by changing the shape, the guard cells can keep the stomata open during the day and closed at night. Okay, or open during the night, closed at day, depending on the plant and where it lives. The guard cells have two different types of cell wall. They have a really thick, stiff cell wall on the inside that's next to the pore of the stoma, the opening there, and a thinner cell wall on the outside. And what happens is they absorb more water. As more and more water is available in the plant, that causes the cells to swell, but this stiffer inner cell wall doesn't really move as much as the thinner cell wall on the outside, and it's kind of like putting, if you glued a balloon to a piece of cardstock, okay, and you blew up the balloon, it's going to cause that cardstock to bend, and the same thing happens here. These two thick cell walls bend away from the opening there, allowing the opening to be more open. When the plant loses water, that causes the cells to shrink, and as a result of that, they close back down, like you see in the closing stomata over here on the right. The stoma again allows for water vapor to move in and out of the cell, usually out of the leaf rather, and it also allows for the gas exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide coming in to be used for photosynthesis, and oxygen being released as a byproduct of photosynthesis. The phloem transports sugars. Angiosperms, which are flowering plants, which are largely most of the plants you know about, the phloem contains these food-conducting cells called sieve tube elements, and they're arranged end to end, and they have the sieve plate, which is basically a perforated plate between the cells, and that connects the cytoplasm together as one long continuous solution of cytoplasm. So how does the sap move? The phloem sap, which is basically sugar water, okay, moves from the source. So the source of the sugar is going to be the leaves. That's where photosynthesis occurs. And the sugar that's produced there is going to be used in other parts of the plant, in other cells, as well as the excess stored away in some sort of sink. We call it a sink. And the sink could be, like in the instance here, a beet. This is a sugar beet, and so the sugar is stored there in the beet. It could be stored in some plants. It's stored more in the stems. Others it's stored more in some of the leaves and things like that. But as the sugar is loaded into the phloem tube, then that raises the pressure in the tube, and that allows the sugar to flow down away from the source, because you're moving from high concentration to lower. And then as it's removed at the sink at the bottom end, or wherever that sink happens to be, the increase in pressure and the decrease in the sugar sink cause the phloem sap to flow from the source to the sink, and then the water can move by transpiration all the way up the xylem again to the top of the tree. So that's how water and food are transported in plants through the xylem and the phloem. Xylem for water, phloem for food. You need to remember which one's which, and the easy way to remember that is the F sound at the beginning of phloem. Phloem and food goes together, and that concludes the notes on plant structure and function.